first things first, do some introductions. I am Jeff Kaplan. I'm the Managing Director of Think Strategies, which is a consultancy that I founded about a dozen years ago, focus on this space. I also have a cloud computing showplace, which is a online directory, and I am hosting my own events, so I know exactly what Rihanna and the staff are going through on a day like today, keeping this thing moving forward, and that's what we're going to do as well. I'll let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll start with a few staged questions, and we'll see where the conversation goes from there. So Eileen, why don't you start?
Good afternoon, or no, morning, good morning. My name is Eileen Berger. You just saw me on the video. It's always embarrassing to see myself. And I'm CEO of CoreSource Technology Group, and we do consulting, software development, and staffing for ISVs and businesses. And our focus area is, actually we have three focus areas. The top one I'd say is business intelligence and analytics, helping companies implement those types of programs, and also moving to mobile and moving to cloud.
Good. David.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Abramson. I'm the Director of Product Management with a company called Logi Analytics. Our specialty is we provide software for embedded dashboards, data visualization, and analytics to embed directly within existing software products, both on-premise and in the cloud. So we work directly with ISVs and SaaS providers to help them directly embed comprehensive, interactive data visualization and analytics inside their existing product offerings.
Hubert?
Hi, everybody. My name is Hubert Pallen. I'm a Vice President of Product Management at Good Data. We're headquartered here in San Francisco. And we are in the business of fundamentally changing how BI is experienced across the board, from business users, business analysts, and IT. We have an open end-to-end platform that allows companies to provide BI for all these three users, as well as power other companies' businesses. We partner with companies such as Zendesk, Get Satisfaction, Pardot, to power their analytics. They can completely seamlessly integrate into their platform. And we also have a large solution provider network and a large network of system integrators to help us grow.
Great. Brad?
I'm Brad Peters, CEO and co-founder of Burst. Been in this analytics field for some time. Prior to this, I was actually responsible for Siebel Analytics, which is now Oracle's BI product family. So have lived through hundreds and hundreds of analytics implementations. Interesting to see how people try to think that they can rethink a lot of things when some of the laws of physics still apply. Burst is a leading provider of cloud-based business intelligence and analytics. We actually set out to take many of the good things that were happening in BI and analytics prior to the cloud at places like Siebel and Oracle, and fundamentally restructure them for SaaS and cloud delivery. And we not only work with some of the largest Fortune 100 companies in the world, from Royal Bank of Canada, TD Ameritrade, folks like that, to also a large number of ISVs as well. Huge percentage of our revenues from folks like OpenText, People Answers, significant other vendors who are providing analytics as a service. And we've seen a wide spectrum of demand out there as people are getting increasingly comfortable with moving their data and their processing to the cloud.
All right. Very good. Thank you very much. We all hear about big data, and I'm not going to recite a lot of stats about how big data is. We just know it's getting bigger every day. But one of the things I'd like to start with, to sort of set the context of the session, is talk a little bit about big data in ways in which people may not be thinking about it. Okay, so I'll give you an idea here. I just came from the Calidus Cloud user events in Vegas, and Calidus, like a lot of companies, is adding analytics to its repertoire of sales enablement capabilities. And they have a number of mid and large scale enterprises who are using their capabilities. And in talking to those enterprises, they're concerned, maybe even upset, that they have an absorption issue when it comes to the new technologies. And they see the data piling up. They see the opportunity to take advantage of new technologies like yourselves. But they don't know how to go about it. It's almost an organizational paralysis, if you will. Talk about big data in the context of either the organizational challenges or other dimensions of the challenge that you are seeing that you're in some ways trying to address? Brad, how's that first starter? It's big enough question for
Pretty
you?
wide open there. One of the biggest challenges that's historically happened with BI and analytics is around the consumption of it. 50% of all BI implementations have failed historically, not because the technology itself didn't work, it was because once this edifice was built to supply insight to various folks, the insight that was provided wasn't terribly useful. People decided it wasn't interesting and they threw it away. That's where data warehousing has typically been challenged, not because it couldn't answer good problems, it didn't have a mechanism for relating it to the business. And I think big data is no different. Right now, there's a lot of this, if we build it, they will come. Let's store a bunch of stuff and maybe someday we'll use it. Hadoop and all these different platforms are out there for collecting stuff. It's the use of it and the consumption of it which has always been the challenge. And what we found historically is that the organizations that are able to consume any sort of data, including big data, are the ones that have an agile methodology for the consumption of data. One that gets answers out to people quickly, but can turn ad hoc answers very, very quickly as well. Because when you show a business user something, that's when they can actually react to it. They can say, I like this, I don't like this, and change. And it's the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth time that they respond to that data that you really start converging on solutions. And I think we're seeing organizations get much better at that agile approach.
Okay, I like that. Now, last week we had your boss, Roman, on a panel like this in New York, and he made an infamous kind of quote, and I can't recall whether he was taking credit for it or someone had said before him, but it was basically the idea that data goes to the data warehouse to die, right? And I think that we've all heard something to that effect for a long time. In your world, you're trying to, in essence, emancipate the use of BI to the business users, you were just saying. Talk about what that means organizationally as you're trying to bring that to market.
Absolutely. So what we fundamentally do, as I mentioned, we are trying to satisfy the needs of all the different types of users, business analysts, and IT. And what it means is that we obviously want to satisfy the technical requirements of IT and the complexity of analysts when they mine the data, but we also, for the business consumers, we want to abstract from that. And even those three roles are really in the user mode. They shouldn't be the one building the infrastructure and be bothered about scalability and security of the platform and so on. And so the way we approach is that we are saying, we abstract from the complexity. We have a modular platform where we can easily switch the components. So in the past, we switched from MySQL to Postgres, and then from Postgres to Vertica, and our customers don't notice that, right? The business layer on top, the logical data model with all the metrics, all the reports, that stays the same. We abstract from the complexity. And we strive to really tell stories around the data on the dashboards and on the visualization layer. And I'd like to point out that what is interesting, and when you said that might be something that people are not thinking about, is that we are now in the business world kind of surprised. Oh my God, big data! What do we do about it? But that's a problem that we know from meteorology, from physics, right, from biology, and right now we need to understand that we are really trying to build a model to understand how consumers behave, right, and then predict that. And so right now, the marketers and salespeople are kind of surprised because now they're asked to leverage the big data to understand the users and build models and augment their actions based on this big data, which is skill that they don't have. Right? The data scientists that are the real researchers, they don't really exist in the business world as much. And so what we are doing is that we're saying, you don't have to be expert in this. Our platform can help you with that, and we have best practices, and you get out of the box the concepts that maybe an experienced data scientist could deliver, but our platform can deliver that and communicate easily to business users. So you can do cluster analysis, you can do RFM analysis, and these are pre-built use cases that you can just easily plug in on top of the platform.
Okay, that's great. David, you've actually changed the name of the company. Is that a reflection of changes you see in the marketplace, or what's going on here?
So right, we did recently change the company name. We used to be called LogiXML. Now we are Logi Analytics, and I think certainly analytics is something that pretty much everybody is getting into at this point in time. There's a lot of new technology out there that's assisting with that when we think about what big data has to offer. And I think the way we sort of look at it is there's kind of two different challenges, right? There's the technology challenge how do you manage all of the data that's now coming in. There's new opportunities to capture more different types of data than you were able to capture before. So we're not just talking about data that you're capturing from your existing products or applications. We're not talking about being able to source data from machines. We're sourcing data from social. We're sourcing data from all kinds of other different variety of types of sources. And so there's the technology challenge of bringing that all together. And then there's the business challenge of trying to make sense out of all of that, right? So, and that's where having the right mindset, both from a development organization, product organization, as well as a business organization to build the right analytics around all those different types of data sources. And there's some great tools and software out there to help us do that. But I think, as we see the sort of the landscape of data capture evolving, that's where the challenges are going to start to arise. How do we make sense out of all this new information that we're capturing, and tool sets like what Logi Analytics provide and what some of the other panelists here, their products provide are ways to try to make better sense out of that and help both on the technology front as well as on the business value front.
Yeah. Eileen, you've actually created a analytics practice. You're making an investment in this area. What are the challenges you're trying to address given these kinds of environmental changes, so to speak?
Yeah, the first thing that I always like to remind people is that going to analytics is not just a technology change. It's not just the fact that you can use tools to really try to understand what's going on in your business. It's first an organizational and a mindset change. People are not naturally analytical thinkers. And so in order to really do that properly, you have to really get your organization to start understanding and thinking analytics, and that also means collaboration, being able to share the data that you have, being able to share your insights into the data. So there is more than just adopting tools in order to have a successful program in analytics. I mean, that's why, I think, Brad, you said 50% fail. Well, even of those 50% that, quote, succeed, only over half of them are happy. Okay, and a lot of it is the mindset problem. And one thing that, in looking at some of the data that's out there, it turns out that Aberdeen did a study that they released the results at the beginning of this year that showed that there's actually 4 metrics you can use in putting together your metrics program that will help you get better and better at it. And, it's one of these 4 metrics. And the first one is data onboarding efficiency. So the number of days, what are the number of days that it actually takes to integrate new data into your infrastructure? Because let's face it, we're all seeing data all the time. And secondly, data accessibility. What is the annual increase in the amount of data that is actually searchable, usable for you? And then data reliability. How accurate and reliable is that information that you are accessing? And what about on-time delivery? So what percentages of your data is actually delivered in the time frame that you actually need it? And so if you will, putting together your programs takes the time, the mindset, obviously picking the right tools, but also measuring it so that you know that you really are succeeding.
All right, so I think you just set an interesting challenge for the rest of these guys up here. You are all bringing technology to bear to address some of these issues. I'm going to let you each talk about where your sweet spot is, so to speak, in those 4 areas. Recite them real quick one more time.
Data onboarding efficiency, data accessibility, data reliability, and on-time information delivery.
All right. David, why don't you give it a crack?
Sure. So I think, right, when we look at the challenges from a technology standpoint on dealing with all the different aspects of working with data and analyzing that data, one of the things that we're really seeing in our sweet spot is this idea that we're not creating completely disparate systems for all this stuff to live in, right? So we're taking the approach of embed the analytics directly into the operational systems that you're working with. And so instead of having to acquire data or move data around, bring data into different formats, bring data into different systems, create separate stacks for your analytics, stand up separate servers, whether they be on-premise or in the cloud. A lot of what we're really seeing success in is this idea of embedding the analytics directly into these systems so that users don't have to go to multiple places to get access to that data and make sense out of it. And I think once you get to that point where you're actually embedding the analytics, you can do lots of really interesting things, both on the interactive analytics front as well as on the data front. Users can make decisions faster around the data because they have access to it right there. They don't have to go to a separate system to find it. The analytics can talk back to the operational systems very easily. And so you're creating this really nice synergy around that. And it not only makes it easier to deal with those data challenges and data issues, but it brings that analytics capability to the forefront and embeds it right inside the applications that users are comfortable working with.
All right, that's good. Hubert, what about you?
So getting the data in, the data onboarding, so we obviously take leverage of the cloud, and this is Cloud Conference, and we have over 1.2 million data loads happening on our platform every week, and so that's what we do to be able to scale. You know, Zendesk, they have over 5,000 different separate data warehouses, and we're able to provision them, you know, kind of one button click provisioning. So we really designed the platform to allow us to do that. And then another thing that goes with data onboarding is the flexibility of how easy it is to do that. And you know, the traditional BI is really a value chain piecemeal together from different pieces. Our platform is designed from the very beginning as one platform, and all the pieces are completely integrated. So that's how we're solving the challenge there. When it comes to on-demand delivery or timely delivery, that's obviously both in terms of how fast we can slice and dice the data, and then display it to the users, and how quickly we can process the data loads. And that's again where the massive scale of our cloud comes in place. And then it's also about the reach, right? So pure JavaScript front end, HTML5 compatible that runs on any device, as well as native application for iOS, where you know we can take advantage of some of the touchscreen events. That combination is what our platform delivers and satisfies all these.
Well done. Brad.
So I think one of the biggest mistakes most people make when they think about analytics is they tend to focus on the UI alone. Analytics is sort of, the analogy has been made to an iceberg. What you see above the waterline is interesting, but that's not what sinks the ship. And you know, when people think about these problem sets, there is a life cycle that data has to go through. There's a supply chain of data, if you will, and there's a lot of things that you have to do to that data to make it useful. Data doesn't come out of core applications in a format that you can just stick it in Excel or a fancy visualization tool and just add it up, and the numbers give you what your management team wants to use to measure their business by. You have to do stuff to it. Sometimes that stuff isn't as easy as you want it to be, and sometimes it involves getting in deep to really understand what those steps are, but they're necessary. They're absolutely fundamental, because we like to say it's the data stupid. You might have a great front end with an HTML5 wonderful thing with charts and graphs, but if the data behind it doesn't answer the question, it doesn't really matter. 80% of a correct answer is still an incorrect answer. So from our perspective, we've taken a different approach. Gartner and other folks try to have folks that do BI and analytics on the front end, and then there's a whole separate set of vendors that deal with how do you bridge the gap between the raw systems and that front end that is actually serving the data up to the user. We don't believe that most organizations have the luxury to have that already set up. And so we've built a fair infrastructure to help automate the process of conditioning, managing, integrating, and assimilating that information such that when you put the UI on the front of it, you actually get answers that are useful and meaningful. And obviously, if it's useful and meaningful to a business person, they're going to use it. If it's just a number, but it doesn't reflect what they actually need to know, it's not a terribly useful exercise.
All right, so let's get into real-world use cases. Talk about an example, or more importantly, talk about where the sweet spot is for what you do. Is it large-scale enterprises? Is it SMBs?
Yeah.
Talk about the use cases for them as well.
I mean, we started out at the top end of the enterprise with large financial services institutions, thousands of users, displacing tools like Oracle and MicroStrategy and those sorts of things with cloud-based solutions. So we've always had in the market, it's been very difficult to take a desktop product and scale to an enterprise product. I liken it to trying to put a jet engine on the back of a scooter. It doesn't really work real well. So you kind of have to start out with that mindset in mind in order to be able to handle those sorts of problems. So a typical case for us, and you can simplify those, but even the smaller companies, the data volumes may shrink but still the complexity is generally there. They still have to have accounting systems, financial systems, marketing systems, finance systems. All those things come together, and there still is complexity. So if you look at a company like Citrix, they are actually managing their entire supply chain with Burst, including taking data from Flextronics, Salesforce, SAP, Siebel, and about 17 other applications, about 260 different data sources coming in simultaneously up to every 15 minutes, so that at the end of every quarter, if they don't know exactly where every part is and they can't ship on time, they won't be able to recognize revenue. It has real revenue impact to be able to have visibility across that entire supply chain from what the sales reps think they're going to sell to what's being manufactured in Asia by the third-party manufacturing supplier. So when you think about those real-world end-to-end business problems, lead to close, so quote to cash, those sorts of business processes, they involve looking into many systems and bringing that data together, and that's where we tend to focus.
Interesting. You mentioned Zendesk. You want to talk more about them, or give us another example that might be illustrative of what it is that good data does and who it does it to, so to speak?
Absolutely. So we actually have 3 different businesses, and Zendesk and our Powered by our OEM program is one of them, to power analytics for other companies, and that's where this scale of provisioning hundreds and thousands of data warehouses comes in place. And that's similar to what we heard, the embedded analytics. You have the ability to do ad hoc analysis embedded in the user interface, completely seamlessly integrated. So it's not just the end visualization, but you can build the reports and you can slice and dice the data inside the interface of our partners. The other business is kind of the traditional direct business, right? So companies such as Time Warner Cable or General Electrics, are using us to analyze data directly, and so that would be your traditional business use cases: sales, marketing, support, HR, finance, analytics, and so on. And what we provide there is, in the old days, you would buy Cognos or business objects, and you would have a team of people to implement that, and then you would have to hire consultants who would help you with the business layer on top of that. So now we have the technology in place, hopefully, even though we know that even the technology piece failed, but then to put on top of that the best practices and the KPIs and the processes and how the data should be visualized. So we bundle that on top of our platform. But the platform is fundamentally open with open APIs, and what is changing now is that obviously the data is still very stored in disparate data sources, and it's not structured well. But cloud is helping with the standardization, right? Salesforce model, there's a core standard model. Obviously, it can be customized with custom objects, custom fields, but the fundamental logical model is similar. And so what we see is that we can take advantage of the standardization and connect to sources, Salesforce, Facebook, Twitter feeds, and all that, which is helping with the velocity and which is helping with time to value, and we are able to deliver the dashboards and the results in a matter of days.
David, what's the target audience for your capabilities, and give us an example?
Sure. So I mentioned this concept of embedded analytics, which we really see as the sweet spot for our technology. Historically, with business intelligence tools, as Hubert just mentioned, you could stand up these massive Oracle systems or business objects or whatever it was, and generally those would end up being these standalone applications where data analytics and all of your data would go, and you'd have to work inside this separate environment to get value out of that data for your organization. So this concept of embedded analytics is, don't create these completely disparate systems, bring the data modeling, the processing, the analytics directly into the operational systems so your users can derive the most value out of it. And it's not just about the data visualization, it's also about the types of data that you might want to analyze directly, and I can give kind of an interesting example. So one of our software partners is a company that does membership management, health clubs and things like that. They have a software application that manages how people sign up for health clubs. They track their attendance, they track when they're going to show up and when they're not going to show up, and the most important thing for health clubs is figuring out when people are going to drop off, when people stop coming and they stop becoming members. And so they're capturing all this data and figuring out how to present the analytics around the membership attendance and things like that back to the users. But what the embedded analytics also gives them access to is this idea that they could bring in outside data sources to help with the data analysis. And one really interesting example that they used was part of their analysis is based on patterns of how people attend, but also patterns outside of the actual attendance, things like weather. So with a health club, generally when it's raining outside, people stop going for whatever reason, right? And so they looked to see how could they bring in the data from weather patterns and combine that and infuse that with the analytics that they're working with inside their application, and then they could track based on the upcoming weather forecasts when to ping these people to make sure that they're actually going to make it into the club. And so being able to combine the data from not only the data sources that they're capturing within their application, but these outside data sources that they're connecting to, like a weather feed, potentially other stuff like social feeds, bringing that data together and showing that back to the users is something that they're able to do embedded into their application and then really derive that business value from it directly.
Interesting. Eileen, you focus a lot on working with the software companies like these and others dealing with BI and analytics. Is that the core of CoreSource's business, or are you working in other areas as well?
Yeah, that's certainly one of our big focus areas, but some of the other areas are cloud, helping companies, in particular ISVs, take their on-premise products to the cloud. And of course, we really, in the analytics area, we work with certainly those two, and we're
Working
going
on
to make
this
sure
one?
that he's going to work with us too. Okay, right. And basically, the cloud vendors is what we're doing. So cloud is really one of our specialties, and then to go along with that is also mobile. What does it mean to have mobile with your product, but then what does it mean? What should you have mobile for your analytics as well?
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that, and let's get the other guys involved in that part of it, because as I see it, mobile is going to be the access point for most of the end users, who include the executives within organizations, to get insight into their internal operations or the environmental or contextual data that they're looking for. What's going on in mobile in your world?
There's always a lot going on in mobile, but it's also interesting to me, there's also a lot not going on in mobile. Okay. Right? But the main thing I think that from our point of view is to try to help companies really understand what do they want to provide on their mobile, because so many people will just start out by saying, let's just do it all. But sometimes that's not the right thing to do, because particularly in the world of data, what data do you want to provide out on your mobile device? Particularly in the world of BYOD, what data do you want to provide out on your mobile device? And is it actually, should it be downloaded or not? And so it's a pretty significant question that has to be answered when you're really determining what you want to do in mobile. And I think people are in two camps. People either struggle with it or they don't think about it. Yeah. And I worry more about the ones that don't think about it, because they're going to get themselves in trouble.
David, it's your job to think about these things from a product management point of view. What are you doing when it comes to mobile?
Well, I think for us, mobile is definitely an important part of where our technology is headed, but it's very closely coupled with the cloud in terms of the ability to give people access when they need access, right, and scale as well. So we work with a lot of companies that where their business might be primarily today focused on an on-premise application. And the on-premise application, is running within their customer sites and so forth. But when they want to scale it out to support kind of mobile interfaces and mobile access points for their end users, obviously they're not planning to give them the entire application in a mobile framework. What they want to give them is the most important insights, access to the key metrics, KPIs, things like that they'll be able to get to with mobile. But in order to do that, oftentimes they're bringing the on-premise content into the cloud as well. So users can access it 24/7 wherever they are in the world, and even access some of the key kind of location-based services that come with mobile devices, mobile interfaces. There's some good examples of our users who are taking data that they're primarily using on-premise and then bringing that up into the cloud so that they can provide kind of that mobile user interface and kind of the 24/7 always-on access to the content, and tool sets that support broad-based device adoption. So instead of proprietary iOS applications or Android applications, the ability to do things with HTML5 and really robust front ends are areas that we're really focusing on.
And Hubert, last week, Roman, like in many cases, had strong opinions about the idea of what you should present in a mobile device, in a form factor. What are your thoughts about that?
I think that mobile is, there's three areas that are important. One is the reach, and that's, we need to understand that the mobile devices have, by the design and by the way they're designed and by the way we use them, are useful in different situations, right? So iPad would be useful for consuming the dashboards and maybe do simple analysis, but it's really used by a business user. Whereas mobile phone or smaller screens are better for notifications or just alert me when something's going on. It's not like that I'm gonna analyze trends on that small screen. And so that's our focus for the mobile devices. And then obviously when you have analysts who needs more deeper understanding of what's going on, actually building the experience for the business users, that's where the desktop or browser experience comes in place. So that's the reach. The second one is that the mobile obviously gives us new types of data, and that's the location-based data, understanding not just through cell phones where we are, but also new types of data like Jawbone app, right, or Fitbit, right? So this is creating new category really of data that we can start analyzing and again plugging into the bigger model of understanding consumers and how people behave and decide. And then the third one is that we are learning from mobile around usability and design in general. Because the fact that it's simple and that it's a touchscreen display teaches us how to design the interfaces in the browser, but also interfaces even for more technical parts of the stack, right? So even if you're designing ETL, you should be really thinking about the concepts of mobile first designs and how to make it super easy and delightful to use, even if it's technical audience, right? So these three areas are critical, and that's what we think about when we put together our mobile roadmap.
Good. Brad, what does mobile mean for Burst?
Mobile it's another use pattern that it's new, but it fits in the same spectrum that's existed for a long time in the world of analytics, which is there's this continuum from one end, which is complete pre-digestion of information. Someone on one side completely thinks through how that information should be consumed by a particular role and responsibility. We used to call that reporting. But nonetheless, in fact, in analytics and even on the web today, that's probably 80% of the information that's consumed. It's completely pre-digested on the front end going in. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, topic that's hot right now is visualization, very, very interactive, self-consumption of data where I'm not producing things that other folks are expected to necessarily consume. I'm actually in the process of doing end-user self-discovery within that data set myself. And analytics is long. There have been niches and various use cases across that whole spectrum, and certain vendors have kind of focused. But I think what we are seeing is that fundamentally, the data infrastructure itself is so hard to pull together that organizations and folks want to be able to leverage that data infrastructure in multiple ways. They want to be able to enable the folks who primarily are concerned with self-consumption. I'm the explorer, I'm the analyst, and I understand the data. I'm coming up with unique answers myself, and I'm probably going to do that on desktop because I have more pixels to play with, I have more interactivity, I've got more things to click on. Moving through that, the mobile device is distribution and reach, but also partial pre-digestion, getting stuff out there so you're really informing people of the things that they should be aware of. They don't have to think as much, they can react more quickly. And on the extreme end of the spectrum is really information publishing, which is getting vast distribution of information out to a wide number of people with very little, if any, interactivity. Why is that? Why is mobile part of that? Mobile is just, is an exceptionally capable publishing environment that also provides a back channel back to the end user as well. So it really just opens up the consumption patterns for data and analytics, by an order of magnitude of what we saw.
All right, so if the consumption is changing in terms of being emancipated across the industry by end users, who is the buyer? How is the buyer changing for what it is you do? Is it a data scientist? Is it a CIO? Is it a CFO? Who is buying? They call you or you call them. Who are you talking to?
I don't know that this is true for everybody. For us, it's generally a line of business buyer. It's
Okay.
somebody who has some sort of a business problem that they're trying to solve. They know that there's data swimming in their organization somewhere. They have this intuition that they should be able to answer these questions, and if they can answer these questions, wow, I could probably do X, Y, or Z more efficiently, effectively. I need a tool set and a process and a methodology to go deal with that. So we generally are dealing with that more business focus. And I do think what we are seeing is, every 7 to 10 years in technology, the pendulum kind of swings back and forth. In the mid-90s, it was all about the business buyer. That's what got SAP off the ground, right? It was them taking away the power from the mainframe. Let's go business buyer first. And then what happened 7 or 8, 9 years later? Oh my goodness, we had to consolidate vendors, and now all of a sudden all that SAP moved into IT. IT controlled everything, and they were doing all the buying for a number of years. I think we've seen the pendulum really swing back the other way, where all of those systems have now been pushed back in the back office, and the buyers reasserting themselves on the business side.
And good data, who's their buyer? Who's your buyer?
So it depends on the business. So for the direct business, I'd agree that the line of business is the key buyer persona, if you will. IT is obviously a strong influencer, right? Because the business people can make the decision themselves. So there's still the head of IT who would make sure that all the technical capabilities and certifications and so on are in place. But in general, it's triggered by the urgent business need to understand what's going on in whatever the line of business is. For the OEM partner business, it's a little different, and the messaging is a little different. It's really the CEO or head of product who's trying to capitalize on the data that they're sitting on, and who's trying to improve the experience for the users, right? To embed the analytics. For Zendesk, again, as an example, the reason why their customers upgrade to the higher plan, the number one reason is the analytics that are embedded by good data into their user interface. So there, the discussion is about how do I diversify the revenue stream? How do I get time to market? And then there's also buyers in the partner network, right? So they are partnering with us to deliver the capabilities. They can not just implement good data to other businesses in the traditional systems integration kind of way, but they can also build their own analytical solutions. So we have companies that build analytics for specific logistics or supply chain kind of process, and they are going to the market with these products as their products, but they're leveraging our platform to do that. So these are the three types.
So I definitely agree, but honestly, I don't think the buyer has changed that much. In general, more so the awareness of what analytics and sort of a comprehensive big data strategy can do for someone. I think I can't remember the last time I didn't open something like even the New York Times and see an article about analytics and big data. And so the general awareness of the capabilities and what's out there and what people can do, the data savviness of the average knowledge worker, so to speak, within any organization is certainly growing. And so you've got not necessarily new buyers, but certainly a whole bunch of new influencers in the process.
Go ahead, Eileen.
Yeah, I agree with what David is saying on that. I mean, really, these days when you really look at what's happening out there, it's all of those people that say, why can't I understand what I'm doing better and make better and faster decisions? It's people like me, okay, as a CEO of a company who needs information at their fingertips, and they're the ones that are saying, I need a solution, somebody figure this out for me. And so it really does come from the businesses, from the business mind, from the people that make the decisions, or as you were saying, the knowledge workers, the ones who have to make decisions every day. And so it's permeating more, I think, throughout organizations, as opposed to it's the realm of IT or it's the head of a business or something like that. It's permeating everywhere, and it should permeate everywhere so that people will think about it more.
Data's cool again.
Yeah, it is. There's no question. A friend of mine, Tom Davenport, said, and I think it was the Wall Street Journal, data is sexy.
Yeah.
Becoming a data scientist is becoming sexy. Can you imagine? Well, listen, I apologize because I was so caught up in asking questions and hearing about the various dimensions of their business. I didn't get a chance to ask you for questions for them. But I know you're all going to be around for the rest of the day, or at least a good portion of it. So grab them when you can if you want to ask them specific questions, either about their business or what they're seeing in the marketplace. But help me thank them for giving us a pretty good sense of what's going on in the world of data analytics.